Okay, we're up to the Mishnah on Chaf Gimel Amid Beis. Chaf Gimel Amid Beis. So we've ascertained that you would have 7 people called to the Torah, right? You have 7 people called to the Torah on a Shabbos, 6 people on a Yom Kippur, 5 people on Yontif, 4 on Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed, and 3 on a normal day. The 3 on a normal day, we gave 2 reasons. We said either Keneged Wat, the Kahana Levim, the Israelim, or Keneged Tanakh. Okay, that's why we have 3 aliyahs. Now, how many psukim do you have to go ahead and lane per aliyah? So the minimal is 3, and that's the discussion we're having right now. Says the Mishnah on Chav Gimel Amid Beis. Hakoyre b'Torah, if someone is reading the Torah, la yivchos mishloisha psukim, you should not go ahead less than what? Then 3 psukim, not less than 3 psukim per aliyah. And the Gemara will say why. So we saw yesterday the idea of miturgimin, that they go ahead and translate the psukim, right? They according to Tosfos, there are places that are admitting to do it and places not admitting to do it. According to the Torah, right? They did it, but Bismana said the reason we don't do it is because we understand Aramaic less than we understand Hebrew, and to go ahead and read it in another language, there is no mitzvah. The mitzvah is dafka to Aramaic, which was given by Ruach HaKodesh. So that was yesterday, and now we're segueing to the Meturgimin. How many psukim per aliyah does he lane? 1 at a time. In other words, it's not pshat you lane 3 and he explains each 3. He explains 1, 2, 3. He explains each one, each aliyah.
Lane 1 and
lane 1, explain 1, lane 1, explain 1. You'd be in shul forever, guys. You'd be in shul again. You'd be in shul forever.
I have to go home now.
Right.
Monday, Thursday, and afternoons. Laning on Shabbos.
No, they would l'chayre anything. L'chayre anything. L'chayre anything. I mean, I'm not sure, but I l'chayre. Maybe Shabbos. Ubinavi. However, they would even target the Navi of Daf Torah. Ubinavi. However, in the Navi, or the Kriya of the Navi, Shloisha, they could go ahead and do 3 psukim at a time. So the Torah 1 pasuk at a time, and the Navi 3 pasuk at a time. The Rashi brings, because by the Torah we want them to understand not to make a halachic mistake. By the Navi, which doesn't contain halacha, so if they go ahead and blow it, it's not that it's okay, but okay, we're skating the shun. We don't lose sleep over it. So therefore, you could go and lane 3 at a time. Now, hayu shloshtin shoylish parshios. If the 3 consecutive psukim with 3 separate parshios, right, then koirin echad, then the Meturgimim would explain 1 at a time, the Navi 1 at a time. So it seems, we'll see in the Gemara what it means, that you'd have 3 psukim consecutively, and each one is a separate parsha. Then, as opposed to ordinarily, where you're able to go ahead and explain 3 psukim, you would not be able to explain 3 psukim. Then you'd have to explain 3 1 at a time. We'll see in a second. Okay. Now, medalgim b'navi, that you would go ahead and skip in the navi. You'd skip from one part to another part in the navi. They medalgim b'Torah, but you never skip out in the Torah. Now, Torah, you do skip from time to time. I mean, usually we have problems with that, finding it right, right. But however, what? Yeah, we do skip. We do skip, right? Yeah. Okay, we're learning for a full statement for Immanuel ben Sipora Fega. It's a young boy who has cancer and can't do anything for him. Unfortunately, the worst thing is his father is a cancer survivor, and his father is an oncologist. It's unbelievable. Immanuel ben Sipora Fega. Okay, now. We don't skip psukim the Torah, and in the Navi when we do skip, right? In the Navi when we do skip, at kadesh la yifsek hameturgimin. In other words, how far can you skip in the Navi? The amount of time it takes for the meturgimin to explain the pasuk is explaining. In other words, if you have to go beyond the meturgimin's explanation, then you would not skip that far. So if the meturgimin would take him, I'm hypothetically 5 minutes, then you could skip 5 minutes. The 3 minutes, then 3 minutes. Whatever the amount of time it would take the Meturgman to be medalek to skip to the next parsha, that's the amount of time that's the amount that it takes to explain. The pasuk is explaining. That's the amount of time you could skip to the next parsha. Okay, now we said the 3 psukim again. This again, I find this fascinating because we all know this, that you can't lay less than 3 psukim. Where does that come from? What's the source from this? Hani gimel psukim keneged me. These 3 psukim, what is it keneged? So Rav Asi keneged Torah Neviim Ksuvim. This is also keneged Torah Neviim Ksuvim. This is Rav Asi. He's the one, guys. Rav Asi is the one who said that the 3 men that we call up on Mondays and Thursdays is keneged the what? The Torah Neviim Ksuvim, as opposed to the other man, the Rabbi, who said it was what I don't remember who it was. Who said that what it was a Kan Neviim Yisrael. Could be Rav Ashi. Okay, so now however, if there are 3 separate parshiyos, then what you go ahead and lay them. Now, what are the 3 parshiyos? Kigoin. The pasuk says in Yeshaya Nun Beis, Ki Chayamar Hashem Chinam Nimchartem, right? For nothing I've sold you. V'loy b'kesef tigo elu. When not in kesef, you'll be right. And then the next pasuk says, Ki Chayamar Hashem Elikim Mitzrayim Yorad Ami B'Rishoyna Logusham V'Asher B'Efes Ashako. And the next pasuk, V'ata Mali Ponam Hashem Kilukach Ami Chinam Moishlav Yelulu, that the Moishlav they should be praising, taking over my nation. These are 3 separate inyonim. Says the Ritva over here, guys, when it says 3 parshiyos, and this will explain Rabbi Z, that it doesn't mean 3 separate parshiyos. 3, again, the parshas in the Torah goes to the psuchos and the stumos, the pay and the samech. Remember, we used to play, baseball, Chumash baseball. So the pays and the samech, right? So a pay is pesuach, is open, it's a space, and stum is closed. So that's not what it means, because there's no parsha in the Torah, pasuk in the Torah that is a parsha b'fnei yatzmo that you have 3 in a row. It means 3 separate inyonim. You have 3. You can't have 3. If it's 3 separate inyonim, then what? Then you won't be medalig. You won't go ahead and skip from one to the next, even though you're able to relate, not medalig, explain 3 pasukim at the same time. That you can't do. Says, let's see. Again, 3. This is the only thing you have. I think it's a parsha shoftim. This could be the haftarah to parsha shoftim. Okay. Yeah. Then maybe it's not.
Doesn't mean anything.
Okay. So now says the Gemara, medalgim b'navi, medalgim b'Torah. You can go ahead and skip psukim in the navi, but you can't skip psukim in the Torah. Now we learn Masech the Yuma, fellas. We learn Masech the Yuma, and we went through the avoid of the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur, and the Kohen Gadol would lane. He'd lane Pashas Achremos, right? He lane Pashas Achremos, and then he would skip to what? He would skip to Emor, and then he would lane Al Peh from Pinchas. Good. So Fred the Gemara. The yes, you a stira. Kaira Achremos. The Kohen Gadol reads some Pashas Achremos, which of course is the avoid of Yom Kippur. Be ach ba'asa, and then he lanes sumat on Pashas Emor. I become Daleg. He's skipping. He's going from Achremos to Emor. Rabbi Lekasha. Kam b'chtei sheyifsa kam turgemin. The kam b'chtei sheyifsa turgemin. Now, you're telling me. You're introducing something that we apply to the Navi. Let's go, guys. Look at me. Let's go through the Mishnah. We said you don't skip in the Torah, but you do skip in the Navi. However, when you skip in the Navi, it's limited to the amount of time it would take for the Meturgemin to go ahead and explain the pasuk. Fred the Gemara Kasha, how could you say you don't go ahead and skip in the Torah? After all, we know on Yom Kippur you do, yeah. And for the Gemara, well, when you skip in the Torah that way, the amount of time it would take for the Meturgemin to explain Achremos, you'd get to Emor, which is right there. Fred the Gemara Kash, 1 second. You just told me that was limited to Navi. That's the pshat you said in the Mishnah. And now you're telling me what extends to Torah? When you said in the Mishnah, it only is by Navi, Mechlal, you can infer that it doesn't go ahead and exist by Torah. So you can't give me that teretz. You still have a problem. When you said medalig and you gave the parameters of skipping based upon the amount of time it takes to go ahead and explain, you said that by Navi, by Torah, it's mashma that we don't go with that waiver. Says the Gemara right away. It's covered at Sibur, you don't skip. It's a pay. You're making people wait. Tercha de Sibura. It's Tercha de Sibura.
Because of the roll, time it takes to roll.
Yeah, time it takes to roll. So now, Fred Gemara of Alokatani, in our Mishnah we learned medalgim in Navi, ve'em medalgim in Torah, ve'ad kamahu medaleg in the Navi, ad kadei yifsakam turgamin. Mechlal, fellows, we can infer the b'Torah klal klaloi. Again, one more time. You said in the Mishnah again, guys, why did you say Torah not, Navi yes? And then you said, and even in Navi, you're limited to the time it takes to turgamin. Now you're asking a stira, and you're saying, 1 second, we do skip by Pashlat Remos. What do we answer? That's the amount of time it takes to Meturgamin. It's masha from the Mishnah that this definition of the amount of time it takes to Meturgamin is limited to Navi. You can't extend it to Torah. So Hajra Kashal Duchte, the question comes back. How can you say in Medalgim Torah? We see on Yom Kippur, in fact, what the Kohen Gadol was Medalig. He went from Pashas Achremos to Pashas Emor. I say Fred the Gemara. Meaning the teretz. And for the Gemara, okay, I'll give you a teretz. Ella lashon charata, Amar Abaya, loy kasha, kan be'inyan echad, kan b'shtei inyanos. When do we say that you go ahead and you can't skip? That's what? That's two inyanim, two separate things. But if it's one inyan, like the Kohen Gadol and Yom Kippur, then you could skip. So now we're qualifying. When our Mishnah said, Ein medalgim b'Torah, you know what it meant? From one inyan, one inyan, one total subject matter to another subject matter, you don't. However, if it's the same subject matter, then you would be able to go ahead and skip. Then you will be able to go and skip. V'haraya, Yom Kippur, it's the same subject matter and we skip. For Tanya, guys, is a raya. Usually, fellas, for Tanya is a question. For Tanya, we learned in a brisa. It's a proof. The way you always know it's a proof is when you're learning the Gemara and it makes no sense. You're waiting for the kasha and you can't find the kasha. And then you look at Rashi and Rashi tells you, Benichusa. Rashi tells, guys, look over here. Rashi, look at the parallel. Look about Tanya, Rashi. Rashi is the Rabbi Shal Yisrael. He's telling you, Benichusa. This isn't a question. He's telling you it's a proof. Rashi had to tell you because normally what? It's a... And Rashi knows you're learning the Gemara and you're waiting for the question. So Rashi says, there's no question. This is a proof. But Tanya, it's a proof. B'dalgim b'Torah b'inyan echad, guys, that's your proof right there. You said it. B'inyan echad b'dalgim b'Torah. You could go ahead, do it. Ubinavi shnei inyanim, and Navi you can even do two subject matters. V'kan. However, whether it's the Torah in the same subject matter or the Navi in two subject matter, you're limited to when right. You're limited to the time that what it would take for the Meturgman to read and not be placed. Because again, you still take into account no matter how much in Yonim you're laning, you got to take into account what Tirchad Tzibura. And if it's going to roll from one to the other, it's going to take more than Tirchad, right? Yeah.
So why would you be allowed to be Medalig at all?
When?
If the point is Tirchad Tzibura, is same in your different Indian.
So because it's not Tirchad Tzibura because you can only do it in the amount of time that's not Tirchad Tzibura. There's two in Yanim over here. There's one mixing up two things, where the Shaimeya is going to be mixed up. I'm glad you said this because I didn't articulate this. There's two problems over here. What's the Indian of one of mishing? Like mishing, right? You have this concept, that concept, you mish it together, they would hear it, the people would not. So, but if it's one Indian, it's one signun, it goes together, so that's okay. And then there's the Tirchad Tzibura time, and that supersedes even what? The one Indian. That supersedes one Indian. Okay, that's the Gemara. Tanya Idach. You shouldn't skip from one Navi to another Navi, even though a Navi you can go ahead and do two inyanim. You shouldn't skip from one Navi to another Navi. However, it's a Navi of Treyasa, you could go ahead and skip. You shouldn't go backwards. You shouldn't go backwards, but you could skip. So again, this is a fascinating topic, and I heard a very interesting shaila, guys. Listen to the shaila. Tirchad Tzibur, right? Why don't you ask the tzibur if they're moichel? We know, for example, And now my minion, you wouldn't even ask that, Shiloh. My minion, we know the answer. Okay. So no. I'm saying like it's an interesting Shiloh. We say that what that parent parents that are Michael in the covet, k'void the Michael. Rabbi Shemachal k'void the Michael. Melech Shemachal k'void and k'void the Michael, right? So you see some stomach from over here that Tzibah has the din of a Melech, right? Or else they could be Michael, but they're not. Okay, anyway, Vita says the Mishnah. What? Don't worry about. I went. Come on. The worst thing is when they take the Torah out, they take the wrong Torah out, and you need Shema, you're embracing Shemos, and this is they left it for Zayis HaBracha the whole year. That's the worst thing. You have to, they have new things. They hang things on in the Torah. They hang things on. They should have that problem. But this parak is again. You forget we're in Masechta Megillah. This parak is all the halachas of Kriyas HaTorah. It's all here in this parak. It's all in this parak. It's a very nice sugi because it's closed. It's not all b'shas. It's basically right over here. So you really, if you look up the Mishnah Berurah, you look up the halacha, you really get it. You pretty much get it straight. Okay. Says the Gemara Vayta. Hamafte benavi, the one who's mafte benavi, who peiris al shema. Okay, let's two things that we've been exposed to. Mafte benavi, we said they would go ahead and they would lay navi. We said yesterday why? Because there was this man where they did away with kriyas Torah, and therefore, so not to forget what Torah was, we laying the navi, and that's why the navi also has to be the inyan of the parsha to recall. Right, that was what we said yesterday. In addition, we said person al shema. That if the davening, we said that a person, it seems to be that coming late was a common thing. So there was a thing called person Shema, where they say Baruch Hu. They say the first bracha of Kriya Kriya Shema, and then they would say Kriya Shema, and one person would say it for everybody. So it seems to be a covet to be person, and it's called person that you're hearing because you only say half the brachas. So that was Rashi's shita. So the one who's maftir is the same one that is Peiros on Shema. They were mechaben him to be the one that after davening, who would do this? But who oivel lefnei ateva, he'd also go ahead, and this is probably the source for often the mafta gets the musaf. This is the source, guys, for the mafta getting the musaf. The mechaben him oivel lefnei ateva. They mechaben him with davening. It's a very interesting discussion. So next, and this is very problematic. Who knows say kapav, and if he's a kayin, he duchens. A kohen duchens because he's duchen, and it has nothing to do with kibbutz that he said Daf Torah. You mechabed him to duchen because he says Daf Torah? Makes no sense. So look at your phones. I got three pshatim for you guys. Three nice pshatim. It's a very, very, very nice kasha. Okay, let me get.
Take out your rotary phone.
This one on the wall? Huh?
Get him on the
Is that the
board.
one you're talking about?
I'll touch it.
Okay. Okay, we're in business, guys. Yeah. Okay. Who knows he has kapav? Piskazu koshehi. Shrei kol koyin knows he has kapav. Every koyin does it, right? Every koyin that most koyin that I know duchen, right? Now, mikam mifarish bal taisus yontif shepiskazu loy huva kan elim mishum seifa. The reason we brought this in is because of the seifa of the Mishnah. Hainu mishum ha-Mishnah abba, the Mishnah that says ha'isekes b'katan sheba shanoi ve'inoi says kapav, that a cotton should not duchen hilkach nachid kanatana. In other words, for symmetry in the Mishnah, since the latter part of the Mishnah was saying you don't, we mentioned something that's a dava poshit that you do. That's the teretz of taisus yontif. All right. Pirish acher v'unoisias kapav shu maskiles birches hakahanim kiluhu agadol shebehem v'kam mefarish bal teferes Yisrael. Like the Teferes Yisrael is a pirish in the Mishnayos Yochanan and Boaz, guys. So how does he explain that there was the kohen gets up and he would bracha the one who they would go ahead and give the honor to going ahead and leading the duchening would be the one who said the Haftarah. That's, in other words, that's the honor. The one who said the Haftarah, he would be honored by going ahead and leading the Bichas Kahanim, being first and foremost. The last teretz of Lomdisha teretz, from Rabbi Kiva Eiga and from the Shagas Aryeh. The Yesh Mefarshim Mishnah Seinu B'Kegoyin Shebeis HaKnesses Kula Kahanim. Guys, let me give you this outside. Here's the halacha. If you have a base Knesses that has 15 Kahanim, so 5 Kahanim go up in Duchin and 10 Kahanim answer Amen. If you have a base Knesset that's only Kahanim, then they all go up. They all go up. Okay. So now, with that in mind, and that's the halacha. With what? Who answers Amen? The Shlech Tziba. What? Oh, they're blessing the people in the fields. It's come on in Saita. We'll get to it. Don't you? You get Best Hashem. Until we get to Saita is after Yavamis and Ksubis. Guys, but you're in it. My guys, you're with me, right? I'm not going to let you go. I'm going to come pull you out of bed. I don't want to hear Yavamis. I don't want you to start saying, Yavamis is 4 months, guys. That's 4 months. And then a big siyum. We always by Yavamis siyum. We never cheap on that one. Okay, anyway. So here's the story. So here's the case. If he would be among those 15 guys, he would be Oil Leduchin among the 5. In the scenario I gave you with 10, 15, he makes sure, who knows he has kappa, he wouldn't be one of the guys staying in Amen. He'd be one of the Kahanim that goes up. This is alumnus. V'yesh Mefarshim Mishnah Seinu B'Kegoyin Shebeis HaKnesses Kula Kahanim. Shalachihi Shem Ein Sham El Asara Kula Oil Leduchin. If you have only 10, you follow the bouncing ball here. You have 10. But if you have more than 10, the ones that are more than 10, in my scenario, the extra 5 go up. And the 10, they say Amen. And this is Gemara in Saita. What does the Mishnah come to teach us? The Mafta from Navi, he's one of the guys who goes up. He's one of the guys. So you have 3 distinct ways to answer this question. Either it's Agav, the Sefer, to be the symmetry of the Mishnah, or he should make the bracha louder than the others, he should lead them, or in a scenario where you have 15 Kahanim and only Kahanim, and 10 are going to stay Amen, and 5 are going to go up, we're Mechaber him to be one of the guys who goes up. That's okay. Back in the Mishnah. Now, Vimhoya cotton, let's say the Mafti was a cotton. You see that the Mafti can be a cotton. Vimhoya cotton. Aviv oy rabbi, oivrin al yadai. His father or his Rebbe, they can go ahead and they could take his place. They could go ahead and take his place. They could say Kriyash or be Paris, whatever, be Paris the Shema and so forth. And that for the Amid. Cotton Kair b'Torah, a cotton could read the Torah u'metargim, and the cotton can be metargim. I will ain't a Paris al Shema, but he can't go ahead and be the one you have to daven to be Paris al Shema. He can't daven for the Amid. This was the teretz of the Taisus Yontif. Since we're learning it over here, that even the Einu Noisias Kapov. Now we know Katanim do. Okay, they do, but they go do with Gedolim. They don't do it themselves. If you only have Katanim, you wouldn't go alone. They do with Gedolim. Yeah, Chinuch. Pocheach. Now, I can be cheap and say person whose feet are uncovered. Rashi says a person whose clothing is above his it's above his ankle, it's higher, and the his shorts, but if you look at Taisus says Pacheach Orim v'Yachef Pirush Hakunchis b'Targminon Atriloi uPachi v'Lesa the Pachi who Targim Shel Orim the Chaim Pirush Rabbeinu Alphas the Pachi Zeu Oisei Shel Lavush Begadim Kruyim. He's wearing ripped clothing. So it's nothing to do with Erva. Rashi's learning, it has to do with the din of Erva, that if you look from the bottom, he's going up towards his waist, there's an Erva problem. It seems to be, the problem is that he's wearing ripped clothing, and then he shouldn't go ahead and he should not go ahead and do, more than that, he could be Parach Shema, it won't be covered for the Torah, he doesn't have for the Yamid, and he doesn't go ahead and do. Suma, a person that's blind. So we get a regular person, a blind person, and Picheach. Suma, a blind person. Paris Shema, he can go ahead and say again, be Paris Shema. Umetargim, he can be Metargim. Anyone who never saw sun iris in his life cannot go to Shema. Again, what bracha he's saying, guys? He's saying the bracha of Yitzhar, right? He's saying the bracha of Yitzhar or Yitzhamaris. He's saying the bracha. Let's do it R. So he can't go ahead. What? He can't go ahead. He can't go ahead and be part of that because he says Rabbi Yehuda because he never saw it in his life. Masha'en kain like the chachamim could. So there's a question. Like we make the bracha, right? But can a suma say the bracha pekei chivrim, right? What would you say? He never. The answer is of course he could because we don't pass like Rabbi Yehuda. The answer is of course he would because we don't pass like Rabbi Yehuda. Right? No, but we're going to see in the Gemara even there's a reason. There's a reason for it. Very good. Oh, you do this. You did this stuff. Okay, very good schmack. Okay, so very good schmack, very good schmack of Gemara. But Swilly Bornstein spoke out today. Very fascinating Shaila. Listen to the Shaila. He spoke up for a Moshe. Fascinating Shaila. I actually spoke to him today. I sent him my advice. He's Swilly Bornstein. What? You got the what? Yeah, interesting, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Listen to the Shaila from Moshe's. It's in Chelik Beis, Nerachaim Simonayim Beis. I looked it up. I went through the tshuva, part of it. There was this was written in Sadik Test, 1939. This is old Shaila. It was written to him 1939. He came to America in 1938. So it was like first year as a Rav. So this kid, Bar Mitzvah kid, and think about 1938, the kid worked the whole year on his Bar Mitzvah Parsha. And he knew it perfectly. Unfortunately, he was off by a week. He was off by a week. He prepared the week before. And he wouldn't be a bar mitzvah. So they sent her a Moshe, could he lane? So you read this day and you say that, of course he could lane. If he could be called to the Torah, he could lane, right? So the Prima Godim, Moshe brings from the Magen Avram, B'Shem, the Knesset Gedolah, that he can't. That he can't. He can't be mitzvah. A cotton cannot be mitzvah the Rabbin Dekriya. The Prima Godim says he doesn't understand. Says the Prima Godim, when it says a Kari B'Torah, the cotton can be called up. In those days, when he was called up, they would lane. Everyone would lane. Right? In those days, when this was written, fellas, this is for the takana. Remember, we made the takana for the people who come early and people come late, right? Before that takana, who laned? Everyone was called up to Torah was lane. So when it says over here in the Mishnah that the cotton Kari B'Torah, so the people God wants to say, so it can be a Balkaira. The people God doesn't understand. It can be a Balkaira. It says, right? That's what you think, right? But Moshe says that's not the pshat over here. He says, what's the Kari? Why do we lane 7? Why did we lane 7? There's an Indian of 7 because they were metaking 7, Keneged the 7, Shami Asaf, and they were metaking the 7. This has to be 7 people, right? There has to be 7 people. So now, Bisman Azeh, so what would happen? Each person would go and each person, the Balkaira would be Mitzvah. They would make themselves, and they have a Chiyuv. The 7 Karim have a Chiyuv to lane. So, fellas, how does it work? Yamoid, Aridavim Ben Yitzchak Alevi. Yamoid, Baruch Ben Meah. Yamoid, Hillel Ben. Yeshua Palak, man. You're a Falak? Oh, man. Oh, wow. Izzy, Izzy got, guys, we found another follicle. Anyway. Okay, anyway. So listen, guys, listen where Moshe says. He says such a brilliant piece. The MS, you'd be called up. There's a chiyuv for you to lane, and you would lane. But after the takana, they stop, right? We can't lane. Most people can't lane from the Torah. Most people cannot lane from the Torah. So you have a chiyuv to lane. So who's laning for you? The Balkaira. That works as din of shlichus. That works through a din of shlichus. Like really, it's understood that when you go up there, the Balkaira is your shliach. To be motzi, your chiyuv, being a kareya. A cotton is not a bar shliach, guys. A cotton's not a bar shliach. A cotton can't be a shliach. So Moshe beautifully said at the end of the tshuva, only as Moshe says, I feel terrible to tell you this. He says, but he goes, I can't. I'll stop. I have to hold up the Magen Avram. He goes, however, if the child's going to feel really bad, you have Yesham Lismach, you be the Prima Garden. He said, Ramosha, he goes, as the heta, he says, but if you lane, then ein moicha biyada. In other words, we're not going to stop you. Ein moicha biyada was Moshe. He felt bad for the child. That was a Moshe. You wanted a psak? I'm giving you the psak. What's the psak? You're not yaitza. But if the child, he was prepared the whole year, and the child, the sensitivity of Moshe, ein moicha biyada. If he gets up there to lay, no one's going to stop him. Why? Because the Prima Gadam says he could lay. Beautiful tshuva. It's the iron base. Look at the end of the tshuva. If you don't go through the whole tshuva, it's a long thing. But as most of the time I look at Ramesh's tshuvas, I always go to the end. I want to skip. Cut to the chase. The lumdus is shlichus. No, but it's really the next time you go up to the Torah, you go, I want to point you a shliach. And the Malkar will say, be quiet. I'm preparing. I've been busy preparing.
What do you do with the food?
Hmm?
What do you do with the food?
Okay. My timer. What's the reason? What? In other words, my timer, the Mafta Minavi, guys, we went ahead, and what did we do for the Mafta Minavi? Guys, what did we do for the Mafta Minavi? We gave him a bunch of kibudim. You parish Shema, you daven for the Amid, you if you're part of a group of kahanim, we'll let you go up and you won't be part of the crowd. Right? We gave him a bunch of things. My timer. Why are we incentivizing this guy? Why are we going, give him so many incentives? Mishum COVID, because of COVID. Guys, got to see this Rashi. Guys, look at Rashi. Mishum COVID, lahaver lifnei ateva, the COVID to daven for the Yamid. Hoyul mematzi atzmei ledava she'enik faydai. Since he put himself out to do something that's not mechubadik. Tiknu leizu l'chavayt. Reading that Torah is not mechubadik. Reading that Torah is not mechubadik. Since this guy does something that's not so mechubadik, so guess what? We'll be mechabed him. We'll let him daven for the Yamid. We'll let him go ahead and be Parish Shema after davening. We'll let him duchen. We give you an incentive because no one wants to have Torah. No one wants it. So Papa says, if Papa didn't say it, I wouldn't say it, right? Now people, how much money do people spend on mafter? Right? Points. We'll sell mafter for a few points, and the redeemable after davening for a few dollars. Okay. Rabbi Barsimi Amar Mishum di Asay le'ansuye. He says because you're going to stop laughing, Dr. Press. Mishum the Asay le'ansuye because they're going to come to fight. They're going to come to fight. Right. Rashi Hadava boli de machlokes. Ani maftev at the tavel of neateva. In other words, I got to get the part of Torah, and then you're going to put somebody else down there. So, what's the nafkamina? It seems to be they used to pay guys. They used to pay you to daven musaf. Now you have to beg a guy to daven musaf. They used to pay you to daven. They paid you to daven. So ikaminayu the avid bechinam. So guys, light Rav Papa, right? Light Rav Papa, right? Light Rav Papa is still covered of davening, despite the fact that what you did have Torah. But light Rav Sima, he's not going to fight. If you don't make any money, what are you going to bother fighting? Right? So since what? Right? If you're going to do a bechinam, if you're not going to go ahead and not take any schar, right? You're not going to take any schar. In that case, what they won't go ahead and come to what to fight. So therefore, fighting you don't have, but covered you still have. That's a very good shmak. Now, Fred the Gemara, Ian Tanan. So again, Rav Papa as covered, and Rabbi Barsimi as to come to fight. Tanan. I Mishnah said the second case, the second grouping. Then the father or the Rebbe will go ahead and daven. Therefore, again, it makes sense. If the whole reason to fight, he's not going to come to fight in front of a gadol. So l'chayra, it must be what? It must be as covered, because it can't be as fighting. Says the reason's covered like Rav Papa. Cotton bar covered who? What do you have to say? It could cover Aviv, the covered rabbi. You have the covered of his father or the covered of his Rebbe, right? Hachanami ikal insuye Aviv and the Tsuy rabbi. Wherever summon the father or the Rebbe, the kashash that maybe what they would go ahead and fight if someone else would daven. Okay, so therefore you have no raya either way to Rav Papa al Skavid or Rabbi Vasimi al's fighting. Poicheach paris Shema. We said poicheach, a person who is he's paris Shema, but he doesn't read b'Torah. Now, what doesn't read b'Torah? Right? Boy minei ula bar Rabba cotton poicheach mahu sheyikra b'Torah. Let's say the cotton's got he's a cotton which could read b'Torah, but he's poicheach. So in other words, maybe over here, since he's a cotton and he's a poicheach, maybe it's not such a bizoyin for the cotton to lane, and maybe even his poicheach, maybe he could do. If the reason that's poicheach is it doesn't read b'Torah, is because I guess because you can't say something connected. He's not, again, according to Rashi, he's not dressed properly because he's ripped in the shorts, but ripped even more than shorts, and so, but or you say that a cotton's not musar. So if he's worn like a gadol, then he can't. If not, maybe he could. Those are sudden to the shaila. So if that's your shaila, you ask about a shaila. I'm like, with the boilach orim, a cotton orim, totally orim. That is why you're limited to b'cheach. It's shaila whether he's or whether it's a shaila of erva or not, and the reason why he could because the cotton is not considered an erva. So or my time alone, we should cover tzibur. It's not covered at tzibur. We should cover tzibur. Guys, we had this right by the isha. An isha can't lane because it's not covered for the tzibur, right? Cotton can't lane because it's not covered at tzibur. And picheach can't lane because it's not covered for tzibur. So therefore, what the cotton picheach will not be able to lane. Summa paris al shema. We said the summa ki paris al shema, and Rabbi Yehuda disagreed, and he said what he can't. Tanya Amalei Rabbi Yehuda harbit safu lidroish b'merkava. Many people try to darshan the Maisim Merkava. The first parak in Yecheskel, the Maisim Merkava, which speaks about the most sublime ideas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we say it's the highest epitome of what of Torah, of intelligence and Torah, and many people have darshaned it. Did anyone ever see it? Of course not. So just like that, so even though you didn't see the sun, he can go ahead and make a bracha and be paris al shema and make the bracha and say the bracha. Fred says the Gemara that's not a good sushtel. Hasam be'avnasa deliba talyamos. Over there by Merkava, Rabbi Yehuda holds. Rabbi Yehuda says over there it's you have vona of what you think it looks like. In other words, it has nothing to do with actual. Okay, very geschmack, guys. When you experience something, inevitably it's because you saw it. You saw it. I used to teach reading, so I would tell parents, if you read to your child, even if the child doesn't see, they develop a lexicon, they develop an internal dictionary. And then eventually, it's a matter of recognizing what they already know. So for example, the word car. Any child knows what a car is before they see the word car. And then they experience it. They don't know automobile. That already will be vocabulary. That has to be taught to them. When you experience what you see goes into your brain. So when a person thinks of a merkava, his eyes could be closed. He doesn't have to see anything, but he begins to delve into what he perceives the merkava would be. So it has nothing to do with a vision because no one's ever seen the merkava. Masha'en came the sun that everyone sees, right? The sun that everybody sees, right? The sumu can't see it. What? Okay. So now. So that's Rabbi Yehuda's retort to them. You're making an analogy between what? Between the Merkava and the sun. The Merkava that no one saw yet, you're allowed to go ahead and perceive it. Hashenkin, the sun that he never saw, he can't perceive. No, the sun, says the Gemara, no. Over there, it has to do with what he thinks. Over here, by the sun, it has to do with Hana. And he never had Hana because he never saw it. For Rabbanon, notice he never had Hana because he doesn't have light. Guys, the Hana of light is that you could see. But since he can't see, he doesn't have the Hana of light. So therefore, he can't make the bracha of Yetz HaMoiros. For Rabbanon, who says he could make the bracha of Yetz HaMoiros, listen to this Svara. Islay Hana, you do have Hana. Why do you have Hana? Kreb Yaisi. The Tanya, Reb Yaisi. Kol Yamai, Hayisi Mitztar al Mikrazeh. Right? It's the pasuk, guys, in the Teichacha. What does it say? It says, "V'hay yisa memashmesh b'tzarayim," and you'll be memashmesh touching in the afternoon, like a blind person goes and touches and gropes around in the dark. So says Rabbi Yossi, I don't understand. Hashem says in the Teichacha, you're going to be like a blind person groping around in the dark. A blind person, there's no difference between the day and the dark. So why the double analogy? You'll be blind in the dark. So what? Why does the blind person care about dark or not dark? It's always dark for him. So it says Rabbi Yossi, I never understood this parsha of the Teichacha. I was going in the black of night, and I saw a dark person, a dark person. I saw a blind person. He was walking on the way, and he had a torch in his hand. Amarti bini, avuka zeh, why do you need this? Amali, so the Psuma said to Rabbi Yossi, calls the man shavuka biyadi, and the adam roya I see, they see me, umatzil see, and they save me, minapsachim from the holes, and minakaitzim from minarbakanim, and from the thorns and from the brambles. So you see, a blind person has hana from the light, not that he can see, but others could see him. So therefore, the Chacham say, after all, he can make the bracha of Adav, and he can make the bracha of Pekei Chivrim. He can make that bracha, right? Because he has enough. He has enough from that. He has enough. Beautiful. Says the Mishnah. Now we're going into the Nesias Kapayim. Mendy, listen up. We're going to the Nesias Kapayim. There's two sugyas here and in Saita. So now, kohen sheyesh biyadai mumim, a kohen that has on his hands mumim. We're going to see that's not limited to hands. Lo yises kapu shenat tuchin. He shouldn't tuchin. Says Rashi, the fi she'am mistaklim boy, the am they look at him. V'aminu mesech the chagiga, hamistakl b'kahanim b'shas she noisim es kapayim. Someone who looks at kahanim in the time where they're duchening, ain't of chaos, right? Their eyes get blind. The shechina shayra al yedayim, because the shechina shayra on the hands. Now, from the day you're little guys, you know that you went underneath your fathers by berachas kahanim. I was always jealous of those sons who would look forward to it and jump to go underneath the talis. I have to pull my kids in. They hated it, and I hated it. It was hot. It was hot, and they were complaining. It was not a good scene. So now, what's the reason that they should look? So Mendy brings up the fact that in the Beis Hamikdash they didn't cover their hands, but we cover our hands. Okay, so we'll see that there's another opinion. There's another opinion. The opinion, guys, is in the Sechta Chagiga and Daf Tes Zayin, and there it says the reason why we're worried about is Hesach Hadas. In other words, if the kohen has mumim, the person who is looking is not going to be thinking about what Berachas Kahanim. He's going to be thinking about the mumim, and therefore what? That's the reason. So Rashi says it's an inyan of once they're mumim, either one or two things are going to happen. If the mumim are on his feet, he's going to look away from that and look at his hands, right? Or according to Tosfos, it has nothing to do with looking at his hands per se. It has to do with Hesach Hadas, that he's going to go ahead and his mind will not be on the bracha or that is being given at that time.
It's Hesach Hadas of the kohen, not of the people that are looking at him.
I don't think I thought it was the people looking at him. It's the Hesach Hadas of the. What's the kohen doing?
So it's a Hesach Hadas of the people that are accepting the bracha?
I don't know. I said Hesach Hadas. I could be wrong. I learned it was the people, getting the bracha. That's the way I learned. Again, you could be right. I'm not. Again, you could be right. I'll look at the Taisus again. Okay, it's a Taisus. I'll look at the Taisus again. But I learned it. Why would the kohen have Hesach Hadas?
He's giving the bracha. It's more of him that has to concentrate on giving the bracha.
Why would the kohen have Hesach Hadas? In other words, according to Rashi, it's going on the person looking at him, right? That they shouldn't look.
Right.
I was thinking that if it's going at the person, they shouldn't look. If the person's going to be looking at his mumim, the person's not going to be speaking about thinking about the Birchas Kahanim, that he's going to have Hesach Hadas from the mitzvah.
How? The person that's getting the bracha.
Yes, that's the way I learned. Now I could be wrong. I'm not. Again, I'm not. But I'm saying, Chaim, this is your sugya. You're sleeping with your. Okay, he's thinking about hyenas. Okay.
The car is not supposed to look at his hands either.
Oh, so again, I give you homework. Kesayin Amid Aleph Taisvis. Go ahead. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I got the kind. He's a Kagan. He's a relative of the Chavetz Chaim.
Not related.
You're not?
No.
Oh, it was Pupko. His name was Pupko?
It wasn't Kagan, yeah.
He wasn't. What?
It's just the length of the shows, the Shamish.
Okay. Anyway, so therefore, let's ton of mumin sha'amru befun of yadav ragla. When it's, I didn't finish the mishnah, I'm sorry. If his hands are full of dye, like you says, cop of the coin should not go ahead. So it's not a mum, but even if his hands have a dye in it, because the am are going to look at it again. So that's why I thought that was going on the am. The am is tackling by Tana. Mumim sh'amru befun of yadav ragla. The Mishnah just mentioned yadav, but you're not limited to yadav. It also includes what? The hands and the feet. I'm Rabbi Shua ben Levi yadav. So let's say hands are nayos if they're spotted. Like you says kappa vishintochen. Tanya namihachi yadav nayos like you says as kappa akumois akushos. If they're bent in, if they're bent to the sides, like you says kappa. I'm Ravasi. Chifani, a person from Haifa. Shani, a person from Beit Shan, like you says, Kapov, should not go ahead and duchin. Tanya Namihachi, Amar reading lefnei a table, Layanshe Beit Shan, Layanshe Beit Chayfin, Layanshe Tivoinim, Lefnei, Shekorin La Alfin Ayonim, Layonim Alfin. They couldn't tell the difference between an Aleph and an Ayin. Seems to be that we don't know the difference. They were able to tell the difference in Aleph and Ayin. These two places didn't, and therefore they would guys mispronounce. Your air means to enlighten. But your el with an ayin means to pour for your wrath. So in other words, the bracha would become a klala. The bracha, what's the bracha? Your er, yud ayin reish. Rashi says, but again, if he's going to interchange the aleph for an ayin, comes your er to pour like pouring anger out. So therefore, now this Gemara, guys, I did not go into it, but it's strange Gemara. It's one of these conversations that you wonder. Amalei Reb Chia Reb Shimon bar Rabbi said Reb Chia to Reb Shimon the son of Rabbi, Moliata Levi, if you were a Levi, pasalatim in aduchin, you would pasal from the duchin mishum da'avei kailach. You have a thick voice. In other words, you have a good voice. So why Reb Chia, who was a godly b'Torah and Midas would say this, I have no idea. It gets worse. So Asa Amalei Avua. So Reb Shimon bar Rabbi came home and told Daddy. Who was Daddy? Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, this Gemara in the end of Kesubah says when he died, it was all over, right? Why does he say, Amalei, listen, Zil Amalei, go tell Rav Chia, Kishatim Agia Eitzel, when you get to the pasuk, V'chikisi Lashem Hamas the Ponav. Is this in Shaftim? V'chikisi Lashem, when you get to the pasuk, V'chikisi Lashem, Loi Nimsa Mechayu from Megadef. It seems Rav Chia, guys, had the ches problem. He didn't say Hanukkah, he said Hanukkah. So he didn't say Vichi Kesi, he said Vihi Kesi. Right? Guys, Al Shtayton Gemara, everything's in the Gemara, right? He couldn't say ches, he said hey. So this is what Rebbe tells his son to go back and shtach Rebbe. That's why this Gemara you need a husband. This Gemara, guys, you need a husband. Amar Rav Huna. Zavlogan, a person whose eyes are always tearing, like you says, Kap of Shentuchin. Frank Gemara about who Dahavi B'Shuvisa, the Rav Huna, there was this Kayin, who was a Savlogan in the area of Rabbi Yehuda, in the neighbor of Rabbi Yehuda, by Paris Yadeh, and he would go ahead and he would duchin. So who Dashbli or have? They were accustomed to him. In other words, fellas, the rule of thumb is if a Kayin has something that is odd, he shouldn't duchin. The oddness being his hands are crooked, his hands are spotted, his hands are full of paint, and if not only his hands, his feet or any part of him that it would make sense, the hesach hadas part, that the person staring will have hesach hadas because it's something odd. So therefore, he shouldn't duchin. So over here, this person whose eyes was avlogman, so why could he duchin? They were used to him. If you stare at a person, if you see a person enough, that it becomes normal. So therefore, and that's the halacha. Amar Yochanan suma ba'achas mein of a suma in one Tanya Namihachi savlogan lo yisas kappa of him hayu dash biro if it was custom muta. Amar Yochanan suma ba'achas mein of a person kain is blind one eyes You says kapov. There was one a kohen who was blind in one eye. That was in the neighborhood of Rabbi Yochanan. That be paris yadei, right? That he would. Says the Mara, who dashbira have? He was dashbira. He was what he was. This is Taisus Raya by the fact that it has Hesach Hadas, guys, because this is obviously Shlomo Misvan Abayis. We're speaking about Amoroyim, and therefore it must be a Hesach Hadas because the Shechin is not being shayr over there. Tanya Nam Yahachi Suma Bachs Me'ena, but Suma in one of his eyes, like you says Kapov, Mehoya Dashbira, might to be permitted. Rabbi Yehuda and Misha Yadav Tzavayis, like you says Kapov, was a person whose hands have a dye in it, should not go ahead and duchen. Tana Imroiv Anshi Ir Malachta and Bekach Mutta. Let's say a majority of people in the city, that was their profession, so they won't think anything is odd about having dyed hands. Therefore, they won't have Hesach Hadas. The whole thing comes together with that svara. I thank you all for listening. I appreciate it very much.